A neighbor's landmark. In every community of young people, there is a threshold experience, a rite of passage between being a kid and becoming an adult. Some places, it's as simple as getting your driver's license, going to the bar for the first time, or losing your virginity. As if that's simple. But in other places, it's an ordeal. Where I grew up in the 70s, the rite of passage was pretty basic and bowel-watering. At intervals along the side of the local train bridge, there were a series of small platforms for railway laborers to stand upon should a train pass while they were working. Each platform also featured a 55-gallon steel drum opened at the top. So when a boy wished to become a man, he would squeeze himself into one of the steel drums and wait for a train to pass by. I know, because I did this when I was 12. It probably sounds stupid. It is. But it's also terrifying. After all, you're only about a foot away as a speeding train roars past you, and it looks like it's going to run you over as it charges towards you. The noise, as the train goes by, is terrific, which is a good thing, as you're screaming at the top of your lungs the whole time. When the ordeal is over, you stagger from your hidey hole. Then pull yourself together and walk staunchly up to your buddies and declare loudly, "That was fun. Think I'll do it again." But nobody does it twice. Nobody. But in more recent years, the threshold experience has been to ride your bike along the North Service Road at midnight, on Saturday night, alone. Alone. And if you ask what's so bad about that, they'll say Headley. And if you ask who or what is Headley, they'll say don't ask. But unless a kid has been living under a rock, they already know who Headley is. Or was. A macho jerk of a biker who liked to ride his chopper, minus a muffler, down the length of the service road at midnight, going as fast as two wheels and a bad attitude could take him. Unfortunately for him, he pissed off the wrong people, who strung piano wire across the darkened road and decapitated him. They say the headless rider continued in a straight line for about a mile before falling into a ditch. So the North Service Road is haunted by the ghost of Headley, the headless biker. Yeah, right, thought Maggie. Her girlfriends had dared her to ride her bike down the haunted highway on Saturday night, Headley's favorite evening, for putting in an appearance. She thought it was stupid and was pretty sure they were going to prank her, but she figured she could do it. Hell, she'd have to do it. The forfeit, if she failed, was just too embarrassing to think about. But she thought about it and picked up the pace, the faster to get it over with. It was a nice night for a ride. There were no cars on the service road, and few on the highway directly to the south. She hadn't bothered with a helmet for her midnight ride, and was enjoying the feel of the warm wind in her hair. She was scanning the road in front of her, on the alert for someone jumping out or screaming from one of the fields to the north, and was so busy keeping her eyes front, she didn't really think about what might be behind her, until she took a quick glance over her shoulder. Far behind her, on the horizon, perhaps as distant as the fourth line, she could make out a pinprick of red light. She stopped momentarily to stare at it, but it was so far away, she was sure it didn't concern her. And so she rode on. But it was no longer as much fun as it had been earlier. The road had gotten darker, if that was possible, and there seemed to be fewer cars passing along the highway. A lot fewer. It had suddenly gone all quiet. So quiet, she could hear the sound of a revving motorcycle off in the distance. A motorcycle? A noisy motorcycle? Without a muffler? It's got to be my so-called friend, she thought, pretending to be Headley the Headless Horseman. But she was surprised they had come up with something so elaborate. She'd been expecting them to jump out with bedsheets over their heads, screaming, "Boo! Boo!" That was more their speed. She pulled over to the side and took another look back, realizing the red light she had seen earlier was the headlight on a rapidly approaching bike. "They're in a hell of a hurry," Maggie said to herself. "I'm going to step to the side here and let him fly on by and wave. Ha, ha, ha." She turned to take another look at the rapidly approaching red headlamp, and then knew in her gut it really was Headley, and she had to get out of there, for there flashed through her mind a series of frightful images of screaming women pushed to the ground, of a man with a bleeding face slashed by a broken bottle, of the wheels of a chopper bearing down on her, of a decapitated head rolling across a road and into a ditch. She had to get out of there. Now. How far was the Esso at the Cloverleaf? The one next to the country squire? A mile? She might be able to make it, in high gear. She'd have to make it. Maggie took off down the service road, pedaling like she had the devil on her trail, on her tail, the hellhounds on her trail. And that's exactly how it felt, that some fiend was pursuing her, and she dare not turn back to look. But she had to look, as if she was being forced to look. The motorcycle was much closer now, and gaining fast, and while it did indeed have a red headlight, Maggie could now see the entire bike and its dark-clad rider were radiating a crimson glow, like the light from a distant fire, or the fires of hell. She could see the rider clearly. What she couldn't see was ahead. It was moving incredibly fast, as if it was gliding through the air and not running on hard asphalt. Maggie rode like she had never ridden before, forgetting about safety, about the darkness, in her frantic attempts to get away, get to safety. But in her heart she knew she wasn't going to make it. And then Headley, was there, and she told herself to keep on riding. Just keep riding. Please, please, let me get to the Esso. Please, please, I'm almost there, and I'm almost in. Not gonna look. 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 Not gonna. She looked. At first the reddish halo made it hard to see, but when her eyes adjusted, she was appalled to see that the rider had pulled up directly beside her. He was dressed entirely in black leather, including gloves, but had no head. They were riding side by side. Somehow, the headless biker was adjusting his speed to match that of Maggie's bike, and she was seized with a new horror. Oh God, don't let him touch me. Don't let him touch me. She knew it would be somehow unclean. Unclean. She feared it might be deadly. Deadly. Headley. Deadly. Deadly Headley. Deadly Headley, she began to chant out loud. Deadly Headley. 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 The headless biker suddenly shot out his hand and grabbed Maggie's wrist, and she went into a spin and hit the ditch. Maggie had the wind knocked out of her, and her wrist hurt badly, as she crawled from the ditch. But Headley, was gone, and the sheer relief made her overlook the pain. She managed to pick up her bike, but she didn't think she could ride it. But it wasn't that far now, maybe a mile. She could walk it. As she looked down the dark stretch of road, she could see a white object in the distance. It looked about the size of a baseball, and it seemed to be hurling towards her. Instinctively, Maggie began backing up. And as the object approached, quick as greased or greasy lightning, she could see it was a human head, an ugly human head, with acne-scarred cheeks and a Fu Manchu mustache, and wearing dark glasses and a German army helmet. Headley. It was Headley. Maggie turned and began to stumble down the road as Headley's head whizzed past her ear. And then the evil head swung around in the air and, racing back, smacked directly into her forehead. And all was darkness. Maggie's friends, hiding under some old white bedsheets, were in a field and waiting for her to pass by. When they got tired of waiting for her, "Geez Louise, it's 1 o'clock already," they went to look for her and found her lying unconscious in the middle of the road. In the middle of the road, not far from the ditch where Headley's decapitated head had rolled so many years before. They got her to emergency, where Maggie was found to have both a concussion and a broken wrist. But given time and rest, she made a complete recovery. Her friends never brought up the fact that Maggie hadn't completed the dare, so she was relieved from having to carry out the forfeit. The forfeit was actually pretty gross. But on reflection, Maggie decided she would have gladly performed it if it meant missing her late-night date with Headley. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this adaptation of my grandpa M.R. James's story, A Neighbour's Landmark. For more dope on Headley, please check out my earlier video by that title. And please drop a like and leave a comment and subscribe for more ghost stories of a librarian.